live streaming music. Hey, that works. Live streaming music from the beer cellar. Just because no one was able to play out, so we'd like set up a Venmo.
Gotcha.
And so we're like, cool. Now we need mic stands and whatever, and figure out how to live stream audio. So that became like the next thing. So we bought all these mic stands, and of course, you're not gonna buy kind of like the cheap one and be like, all right, how often am I gonna use this? So
I mean, I think they look good. I'm just saying.
There's a nice one in the corner, but that's like a boom.
Yeah. Is this close enough?
Maybe a little closer, because you're pretty quiet. You're such a soft-spoken lady.
One of the first times I've heard that. Is this good?
Yeah, I think that's good. Yeah, fish. Oh, wait, hang on. I can do this part too. I kind of know what I'm doing over here. All right, I think that should...
It's pretty much close right there.
Yeah. All right. Welcome back, Inebri-arts. This is Andy as always, and we have a returning guest this week. It's so funny because we were talking about it the other day, me and Fish, and I'm like, oh, Sarah Martin's come back on the show, and he was like, which one? And I forgot we have two. We had a stand-up comic who's from LA named Sarah Martin.
Oh.
Yeah, so it's the musician Sarah Martin.
Yes.
And
This is funny though.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Maybe it was so long ago that I talked to her. I can't remember. I mean, I'm sure she's professional. I'm sure she's but you've been putting out some new stuff, and like as we were talking before, you got like big plans for this year.
Yeah. So
are you going to commit and just be like, this is what I'm doing, or?
Yeah, no, I'm in studio. I'm committed to spending the money. So I haven't released a song prior to the last two I've released now, and since 2021 with Those Days.
Wow.
Yeah, which I didn't really process that it was that long ago.
Was it an intentional hiatus, or just kind of like...
It's just kind of how life went.
It gets that way where you're just all of a sudden like, oh yeah, we used to do...
super expensive to do that, and then I was just kind of... My priorities shifted a little bit on the financial end.
Yeah.
But now they're swinging back the other way. So I'm like, we're going to spend some money on music again because it's been really long and we have a lot of songs to get out into the world. So.
Were you at least writing during that time, or?
I have written songs during that time, yeah.
Yeah.
A few, yeah. But it was more of like, okay, I've got to try and, get a house and pay for a wedding.
And be a grown-up. And
now an entire wedding budget that I don't need to spend money on.
Well, there you go. So,
even though that's kind of in the house fund, but we're going to make steps towards hopefully getting some, people to contribute to the whole album fund too. So
yeah, that's awesome. So you were saying that you're going to put out a song a month.
So except for, so January I'll have a song out. I believe in February I'll have a song out, taking a break for March, April, May, June, July, possibly August, September, and October I will be on the road again.
Oh, nice.
Yep. And then November and December.
Well, you haven't toured that I know of recently, have you?
No.
Wow. That's exciting.
It's been a second.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited to go back, and because like last time I went on my road trip, it was more not to do music, and it was more to like discover who I am.
Yeah.
And this time I'm really excited to go and promote my music, and because like last time I went on my road trip, which was a year after I released Those Days, people were asking, I was sharing songs that I had written that weren't out yet, and they're like, where can we find these songs? And I'm like, I haven't released them yet. And now these songs are being released, so I can go across country, and when people are like, where can I hear that? Like, you can hear it actually wherever you get your music.
So you went on a self-discovery road trip?
Yeah.
Did you find you?
I did. Well, so, you know, as a musician, and I feel like anybody that just kind of is like defined by like one thing in their life.
Yeah.
It's really hard to conceptualize if that was taken away who you would be. You know, because I think so many of us put our identities in like what we do.
Yeah.
And that was definitely the case for me, especially because I've done music my whole life.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people are like, oh, Sarah Martin, the singer.
Yeah.
And so...
Not Sarah Martin, the comic.
Yeah, not
Sarah
Martin. Although, again, I am hilarious. But yeah, like, I think I was just kind of got to a point where I was like, I didn't know who I was other than Sarah Martin, the singer.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, we got to go figure this out.
That's interesting. I have not gone anywhere, but my birthday is in about 2 weeks, and it's a shitty one.
No, wait, what? Your birthday is a shitty one?
Well, this one is.
Why?
Because it's a big one. I don't like it.
What is it?
It's just like 1,000.
It's not. Okay, I have one thing to say about that. Okay, anyone that's like, oh, I'm getting older, I'm old. You know what? I always tell people this. I said, your 95-year-old version of you would be laughing at you for thinking that you're old now.
I get that. And like, when people are like, oh, I'm old, and you're like, you're 35. Okay, it's not. Well, no, but people say that. I'll like be like, oh, I'm old. I'm like, shut up. But it's like, in the past like 2 years, you're like, oh, my eyes are starting to go, like my knees are like, it's like starting to like, oh, great, everything sucks now. Yeah,
but no, but
I'm being dramatic. I know that, but I've been kind of like doing the exact opposite of what you were talking about. Instead of being like, oh, what is, who am I? I'm more like, how did this happen? Where I'm like constantly like looking back and going, oh, this was a big thing in my childhood. That explains why, like, I really like to cook, or like, I really like science. And I was like, so I've been kind of like going back and rewatching, like, there was when I was a kid, there was a show on called, I think it was just called The Day After. Okay. And I didn't realize how big of a deal it was. Like, there's a documentary about, I think it was like 2 nights on TV. Like, it was not even a mini series.
Wait, was this an actual, like, consistent show? Or was
no, it was just like 2 nights and like done. And, like, I didn't realize how big of a deal it was at the time, but like, it was probably the only thing I ever watched that actually scared me to the point where, like, I had an ongoing like fear.
What was it?
And it was so this is like the mid 80s, and it was about a nuclear war.
Okay.
And like, my parents should not have let me watch this. And even like, I think it's on YouTube. And I went back and watched them. Like, yeah, man. Like, what were they thinking? Like,
take note, parents. Your child.
This is not awesome.
Just 2 nights.
And I remember, and I was so young that I didn't really understand what the whole thing was.
Yeah.
So the one thing that really like weighed in my head as a kid was when the nuclear war happened, all the power went out. And so, like, if I was alone, I would, like, constantly be, like, looking at, making sure that, okay, the light's on. Like, it was so weird. And, yeah, like, it really, really fucked me up for a while. I'm much better now. I mean, the power went out yesterday. I didn't cry at all.
Oh, my gosh. It did go out yesterday.
Yeah.
Just for a little bit, though. Like, it was, like, 30 seconds on mine.
Oh, here it was, like, I think we had to leave because we were trying to, like, prep stuff. And
yeah.
I don't know if you've noticed our lovely window over there. I mean, it has a picturesque ocean view, but
the
it doesn't.
boarded up thing?
Yeah, I pinned a ocean view on it.
Oh.
But it doesn't provide much light. So, yeah. Yeah, so we had to, like, move the whole process somewhere else so we could see. And it turned out only to be, like, 30 minutes, which really wouldn't have made a big difference. But, like, at that point, you just don't know.
Well, 30 minutes is a long time. I think power was out for me for, like, 30 seconds. So.
Yeah, aren't we lucky?
Yeah.
So, on your travel, like, was there, as you traveled, was there like Tallahassee, oh, that was really monumental and was enlightening, or was there like a spot that?
So you were just talking about how, like, when you were a kid, you had to, like, you didn't like being alone, you had to make sure things were like the light was on.
Yeah.
Like, so I used to be afraid of the dark.
Yeah.
And I didn't like the dark. And then on my road trip, I found myself camping in a tent by myself on somebody else's farmland with no electricity around me. And I had just built my first fire. And there were literally, like, coyotes in the background howling and, like, coming closer.
Yeah.
And I just remember thinking, holy shit, this is so cool.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then, like, also having that realization, I used to be scared of the dark.
Yeah.
And now I'm here in this place by myself, like, with this imminent threat of these coyotes, and I am excited and exhilarated by this. Like, it's no longer fear. You know what I mean? Like, there were just so many times on the road trip that I just felt, like, empowered. And that's why I'm really excited to get back on the road again, because I know anytime I travel by myself, the beauty of that is there's no one else to hand off tasks to. There's no one else to get to solve your problems. There's no one else being like, okay, well, what do I do now?
Yeah.
Like, you have to ask yourself that question. You have to solve your own problems, and realizing that you can do that is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Pretty badass. So I became just, a cooler person. And you were talking about aging and stuff like that. I'm like, man, I would never want to go back to a younger version of me.
I wouldn't want to go back to a younger version. I just wish, like, my knees didn't hurt all the time. Like, it's just that, like, kind of
go to some physical therapy or something.
Oh, yeah, I mean? Yeah. Like, well, it's funny. Like, there's a few people online. I know you were posting doing some yoga, and I'm like, maybe I should do some yoga. I feel like that would. Yeah.
And just to be clear, if you've seen the reel of me doing yoga, it's very clear that I don't know how to properly do a sun salutation.
I think I could probably do the warrior pose. Yeah. That's like the standing one with your arms out. I think I could pull that off.
Powerful.
Yeah. That's about it.
Yoga's good. And I'm the kind of person that, like, I like to do the stretching and stuff, and someone once told me that it's not meant to be perfect. It's supposed to be a yoga practice. And I'm like, good, because...
Well, I think that's a way that, creative people are used to living in that way. And I feel like more people should
I'm like,
work
it doesn't matter if it sucks.
Right.
It doesn't matter if I'm not doing all the poses properly. The fact is, like, I'm moving my body. It's stretching. I'm deep breathing.
Yeah.
These are all beneficial things, whether I'm doing them 100% correctly or not.
And, like, creatives are used to being like, oh, practice is practice. It's not supposed to be awesome.
Right, exactly.
But it's interesting, and I appreciate that. And I need to get back to this. I have a weird practice.
Yes, what's your weird practice?
And it's because a friend freaked me out about getting older.
Okay.
And she worked kind of not really physical therapy, but that kind of thing with some elderly people. And she's like, do you know why people fall on the ground and can't get up? And I'm like, I mean, not really. She's like, when was the last time you were on the ground? And I'm like, oh God, never. Like, why would I do that? And she's like, yeah. She's like, at some point you get old enough and you don't realize that you've lost the physical strength to pick yourself up.
Interesting.
And I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. So then I kind of became paranoid because a few years ago I, like, really hurt my knees. And so then I was like, well, all right, what's a simple thing to do? Like, I'm not a gym person. So I'm like, all right, push-ups. And so I'm like, the idea of, like, getting up to work out, like, early or I'm like, I know I'm not that person.
Yeah.
So then I developed this, like, really weird practice, and I call them pee-pee push-ups.
Okay.
So, like, I'll be here in the office, and, like, I'll be like, all right, I'll go down to the restroom, and I'll use the restroom, and I'll come back, and I'll do, like, push-ups. Okay. And, it starts with, 5, 10, and then it got up to, I think at one point I was doing, like, 100 plus push-ups a day.
Nice.
Because you're doing, like, 25 push-ups in, like, 4 sets, and it was, like, noticeably like, oh, shit, yeah.
We're getting stronger.
I've seen some improvement.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, I haven't done it in I haven't done it regularly since we moved into the new office, just because I don't know. I lost that kind of like.
I was gonna say sometimes it takes like the association. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
yeah,
So
yeah.
It's like if you're in a new environment, you forget what that was. Like,
and it just became like it was just a thing to do.
Yeah.
You know, it was like that's you know, you get up, you use the restroom, you come back, you do push-ups, you get back to work.
So similarly, I can't say that word.
Oh, is there a little? I'll explain the fly too.
Yeah. Similarly, I have like wanted to start getting back into like working out and stuff like that, and so I came across this video of just like someone doing like chair sit-ups.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good idea. So what I've been doing is I've been just putting my chair in the middle of the room so that anytime I walk into it, it's like a visible
It's right there.
obstruction.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, let's do 10 sit-ups. But the other thing that I realized last week is I was doing these chair sit-ups for like 5 days in a row, and all of a sudden my thighs were like so bad. Like, it was hard to walk.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh, we forgot about the muscles on the other side.
Yep.
So then I'm like, okay, now I need to do sit-ups, and then I need to do like the Superman things.
Oh,
work,
yeah,
like,
yeah,
the
yeah.
opposing muscles, you know what I mean?
Yep.
Like I need to do like the kickbacks, and now my legs this week are feeling a lot better. But it was just like one of those things. I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna put this constant reminder in the middle of the room that.
And it's that kind of like you get that snowball rolling,
Yeah,
you know, because like
exactly.
then the 10 push-ups become 25 push-ups, and then be like, well, I'm gonna do 25 push-ups and 10 curls, and
Right.
then like it just like builds on itself.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, now I'm doing sit-ups, and I'm doing working the reverse muscles, and now I'm doing some like wall push-ups. You know what I mean, like just like simple things.
Yeah, and if someone's like, hey, do you want to go to the gym and do 150 push-ups? You'd be like, no. That sounds awful.
Yeah, I'm like, I've just been trying to work it into my daily schedule rather than like putting.
See, so I'm not crazy.
No, not crazy at all. I was thinking too with the whole getting up off the floor. I was thinking like, you know, something as simple as just getting down on the floor and lying flat and then getting up every day. You know what I mean? Like doing that 10 times.
It's just one of those like you don't think about it, but at some point in your life, you're like, yeah, I'm not getting down there. That's really uncomfortable.
Yeah. Look, I'm not there yet. And I'm gonna start getting up off the floor every day.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen.
So music.
Back to the music. This is the part that I love about being on this podcast is because I go everywhere else and talk about music all day, and we like there's always some different subjects.
And see,
you
that's
know? Like we can talk about music, that's great.
Yeah.
But I like that we trail off. Into other
It's
things.
my basic premise for this is I remember I had a comic book creator on, and at the end he's like, you didn't even ask me who my favorite comic book creator is. I'm like, yeah, I don't care.
I don't care about that.
I'm like, I just kind of want to get to know you as a person.
Well,
and then be like, oh, there's, Ben Goldsmith. He's a cool dude.
This podcast is the cross country road trip. You are getting past,
interesting.
You are getting past what people are defined by
Yeah.
and going a little deeper, and I appreciate that.
And you know what? I really am intrigued by the idea of camping by yourself.
Oh my gosh, it's awesome.
Because everyone is like, oh, you need to get away. And I'm like, with who? Like, what am I, like going away? And people are like, oh, fish. I'm like, no, I go away with fish. I work with fish far too frequently.
Fish,
like, I'm getting away from him. You love him, I guess. But like, I've been obsessed. I've been like watching a ton of like this YouTube, TikTok stuff of like people camping out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. I think that's the thing is like people don't realize that doing stuff by yourself is an actual option that we all have. You know what I mean? I feel like society's always like shoving down your throat like you do this with friends, you do this as a couple. If you go somewhere by yourself, that's weird and people are going to look at you like you're strange.
Like I've told people I've gone to the movies by myself and they're like, really? And I'm like, yeah, like no one's going to talk to me like.
Yeah, like why do you Question. Why on earth do we need to go to the movies with somebody else? We're literally not talking to them, or at least we shouldn't be through the movie.
And it's such a common first date where you're like, that's a stupid idea. You're going to sit in a
tell you
dark
something?
room and not talk to the person that you're trying to get to know.
Since middle school, right? When the movies were like, oh, well, you go there and you guys go and make out. I've always been like, no, we don't do that. Because I'm like, if I'm paying $12, which is now like $20
I was gonna say,
to go watch a movie, inflation. That just gives you the
that's because you're not. That's because you're not going to the mystery movie.
$12. What is that? What does that mean?
The mystery movie is $5.
Where do you get this mystery
I
movie?
think it's. I'd have to look. I can't remember if it's once a month or every other Monday. So it's only on a Monday. You pay $5, and all you know is the rating and runtime.
Where?
At the Kingston Collection. I think it's a Regal.
Interesting. What time is this at?
Oh God! No,
Andy,
I've been a few times.
information.
I'm sure it's a. I think it's a Regal Cinema. So
It's like a
you know,
choose your own
not a sponsor.
adventure.
Yeah, you just walk in cold.
Oof.
And so I've been a few times, and
Does anybody ever walk out?
I've never. I'm sure someone has, but I've never walked out. Because a friend of mine, there was a horror movie called Smile a while ago.
Oh my gosh. I was creeped out by that preview.
Yeah, so I'm sure if someone paid $5 for that and they didn't like horror movies, they might be like, "Well, I'm out
I
of
was
here."
just going to say that.
But I saw movies that I would have never gone to see.
Okay. That's, yeah.
They are not just current movies; they haven't even been released yet. So this is like before their opening night. And the first time I heard about it, I'm like, oh, we should go. And I went with Fish. But it was, you know, and so then it was right around the time of the Barbie movie, but before I think like any real information had come out, or at least that I knew, because I was like, ugh, if I had to sit through a little kid's movie, like I didn't understand what the Barbie movie was. It was The World's Greatest Beer Run. Is the name of the movie. Had never heard of it. Didn't see trailers. It was fucking fantastic.
Yeah.
And it's like based on a true story about some guy from New York who was, he worked on cargo ships, so he was exempt from the draft.
Okay.
During the Vietnam War. Mm-hmm. And he was sitting around the bar, and they're all talking about, you know, all the, you know, guys they've lost in the neighborhood and blah, 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 and the guys who were over there. And he decides he's going to take cases of PBR to Vietnam and go hand deliver them. Ooh. And he ended up on like the front line in Vietnam because he's walking around in like civilian clothes being like, how do I get to the front line? So everyone just assumed he was like CIA.
Yeah.
So he was getting like flown like on army helicopters to go hand deliver these beers to his buddies. And it was a great film.
Yeah.
I had no idea. $5.
Oh, well, I might have to do that.
Yeah, and then the other one, I was like, it's definitely not my kind of movie. It was very much, you know, this kid needs a transplant, and it's a blizzard, and how do, you know, this whole like,
yeah.
It was fine. It just wasn't
for you.
Yeah, my cup of tea. But I still sat there and watched it. It's like, hey, I don't regret spending that $5.
Yeah, like if you need, you're gonna have to tell me what time when you.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to figure it out and look it up because it is Monday nights, and I want to say it's like 7:00 ish.
Choose your own adventure.
Yeah.
Somebody chooses it for you.
Yeah, it's the exact opposite of choose your own.
Opposite. Somebody chooses your adventure.
Yeah.
For those people that, you know, actually, that's probably a good start for somebody that doesn't know how to hang out with themselves. It's really, you just have to go. They'll do the rest for you. You don't have to make any decisions.
It's really good for indecisive people.
Yeah, you should just. Yeah. People should do that.
Yeah.
People should do that. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with hanging out by yourself. I've gone to dinner by myself. I've done so many things by myself, and at first, I think it's uncomfortable, but honestly, I think a movie is a great place to start if you're someone that just like, because you don't have to worry about people looking at you.
And there's no pressure to engage anybody.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, I think that's actually a perfect start if you wanted to go do something by yourself and get more comfortable in that scene. Go to a movie by yourself.
Is there anything that you're like, I definitely wouldn't do that by myself? Like, would you go to a concert by yourself?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah? Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Yeah. I feel like, well, also because I'm one of those people. Well, here's the thing. Okay, so part of the problem.
Okay.
Part of the problem with people.
Tell me about your problem, Sarah.
Part of the problem with people going out by themselves is that they're afraid that people will look at them like they're weird.
Yeah.
My thing And the solution to the problem is not caring if people think you're weird. So I go to concerts by myself. I will dance on the dance floor by myself.
Yeah.
I will have myself a good time because you know what? At the end of the night, who cares if somebody thought I was weird? I had a blast.
Yeah.
You know
I'm
what
kind
I
of
mean?
okay with being weird. I think
Yeah,
that's...
and like if someone has like an issue with me dancing by myself and has an issue with my happiness, well, that sounds like a them thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's none of my concern.
Yeah.
It's not my responsibility to make them feel comfortable with me. Like I'm just living my life.
I think that's part of the nice part of getting older, where you're just like, yeah, I don't care. Like that's
So I know that we've talked about this before, but
Yeah.
like, I've been engaged twice.
Yeah.
But after the first engagement, that really was, I think, a huge turning point in my life, because up until that point, I was so concerned about what other people thought of me. Mm-hmm. And then like once I had that like essentially like blew up this perception of having a perfect life.
Yeah.
I was like, well, screw it. Who cares?
That perfect life is such like a phony...
Yeah, and it just stresses you out. It's never perfect. You know what I mean? Like trying to keep up with perceptions. So releasing...
and it's very much this time of year. And like there's so many people that are like, this is such a stressful time of year. I'm like, yeah, because you let it be.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like, you don't need to be with somebody. Like you can just be enjoy. Like I went to Brewster Gardens the other night and looked.
Oh, it's gorgeous down there.
By myself.
Yeah.
You know what I did? I went and I popped on like an old school Dean Martin Christmas list and I put it in my pocket and I was just walking around Brewster Gardens by myself with classic Christmas music in my pocket.
That's perfect. Yeah.
Enjoying the lights, and I was like, this is magical for me. You know what I mean?
And
like,
no one's groaning. Yeah.
I'm like, my music's not bothering anyone. People are like smiling at me. I'm like, you don't need to do, like, people like think of, oh, well, that's like too romantic to do by yourself. I'm like, well, go get romantic with yourself. Like, you know what I mean?
Well, hey.
Like, just treat yourself to a little love. Like, you deserve romance too. Like, who cares if you're single?
Yeah.
You know? Like,
it is that kind of like, sometimes I don't know if like that mentality is why I'm single, because you're like, yeah, I mean, relationships are, I don't know how people make them work. I don't know. Like, well, obviously I don't know.
Seem to make them work either. So.
Right there with you. But it's like, yes, of course, there's gonna be like some like, what's the word I'm looking for? Not collaboration.
Compromise.
Thank you. But just, I know so many, and I can only speak from the guy's perspective, guys that are just miserable because it's like, oh, well, I have to do this because she wants this. I have to do this because she wants that. I'm like, does she ever worry about what you want? Like and I'm not saying that, it can.
Oh, I'm not judging it.
Yeah, no,
attacking.
I feel like both sides have unrealistic demands of the other person. Mm-hmm. And it's very like kind of pigeonholed. Like it's that happy wife, happy life, and be like, what about the dude? Like, how about, can you both be happy?
Yeah. I'm totally on that plane with you. I think what I'm finding, or I think I'm finding, is that so I feel like I did a lot of work on myself.
Yeah.
After my last relationship, like I learned a lot of stuff about myself. I learned a lot about like how I needed to grow as a person and a partner, and like what my needs were and stuff like that. First of all, I don't think many people have that experience in life. I don't think they're mindful enough to have that experience in life and like actually know what they need. So I think
I'll agree.
In life, when you're meeting someone and you're romantically interested, if you don't know exactly who you are and you don't know what you want out of life, I think that you tend to follow what the person you're interested in follows. Like,
Oh,
I
interesting.
think that,
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
you talk about, like, putting your best foot forward when
Yeah.
you are first in a relationship. And then over time, it's like the true person comes out if, you know, who they were in the beginning was just because they were infatuated with you and
Yeah.
they would do anything, you know?
Yeah, I know exactly.
So it's like,
I know exactly who you're talking about in
So
my
it's-
life.
so it's like after a while, that infatuation wears off and a person can realize, hey, you know, this actually isn't what I want. These are not the things where I like, this is not the path I want my life to trend.
Yeah.
But instead of being honest with the other person, they're like, okay, well, I've got to be a good person.
Yeah.
I've got to like do,
I love cats too.
yeah, like I'm going to do. I don't know if that's specific to my situation.
Oh, I don't know. I'm just
That's yours.
no. I'm just known as a person who is not a fan of cats. So,
Oh, okay. Well, that was.
Are you
one
not
of
a cat person?
No, I am. I
Oh,
have two
okay.
cats,
No,
but
that was not directed at
That
you.
was actually one of the issues. with
Oh,
my
shut
last-
up. I wasn't
Yes.
trying.
I was like, oh my gosh.
was not trying to delve into your relationship.
So anyway, but that so as an example, since it's out there, it's like one of those things where like, okay, like we'll make this work with the cats. We'll like figure
Yeah.
it out. And then down the line realizing like, okay, like I actually just don't want cats in my home. You know what I mean? And it's like, okay, well, that's not something we can compromise on because
Right.
I'm not getting rid of my cats. But it's also like, okay, you know, if he were to just go, you know, just play out life
Yeah.
when he knows that he doesn't like cats and I now know he doesn't like cats, well, that's a recipe for both people to end up miserable.
Right, because then it adds in this level of animosity.
Yeah. I'm like,
you know?
I don't think that
Yeah.
people know, like, that it's, like, again, putting up this, like, perfect life perception, I think hinders people from being honest with each other in relationships when they realize that something is not sitting right with them. Because I think people are so focused on not being the bad guy
Yeah.
or being perceived as someone that's like not being honorable or something like that. You know what I mean? Where they fake their way through their lives and then the situations are like, you know, oh, it's the old ball and chain.
Yeah,
You know what I
yeah.
mean? And it's like, you got yourself into that situation. And like, there were things that you said that like brought you to this point, and you are now just placing blame because you're angry that you made that decision in the first place.
And a lot of it comes from the stuff you don't say. And
Yeah,
this-
exactly.
And I'm going to give you.
And this goes both ways
yeah.
for girls
oh, yeah,
and
yeah.
guys.
I'm
just
going to
so
give you
we're clear.
a hyper specific example
Yes,
of one of my
please.
biggest pet peeves.
Okay.
Is well, I shouldn't have to ask.
Oh, yeah, no. You
Been
have
like,
to.
well, that's communication.
Well, again, I think, and again, that's one of those growth things in
Yeah,
life
yeah.
because when you're younger.
Most people don't get to that growth part of that.
No, when you're younger, you think people are just supposed to like understand you.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say this from my perspective, like when I was growing up, I was very, very fortunate to have parents that were like super lovey-dovey and like they just had
interesting. Yeah.
they just
I
had a
did
great
not.
relationship. And so I never saw the work they put in behind the scenes
Yeah.
to get there. So there was definitely a period of my life where I thought someone was just supposed to understand me. I thought
interesting. Yeah.
I thought somebody was like supposed to like, you know, if I'm picking at my fingernails or doing something, and this is the crazy thing.
Yeah.
I would like pick my nails or like bite my lip on purpose sometimes to see if like the other person would realize I was uncomfortable.
Sarah, guys don't pick
Right,
up on clues.
Right. But this is like a very
Yeah.
real perspective is like and then I would get upset when they weren't asking like what's wrong because I didn't know how to say, hey, something's wrong.
Right.
I need to talk about it. Like I just didn't know. That made me so uncomfortable.
And-
like the words
yeah.
physically would not come out.
And I think a lot of it is people are worried about upsetting the other person or getting
Right.
into a bit of a conflict. And,
Yeah.
you
And
know,
then
like, it's hard.
but
to
that
have the
always
conversation.
ends in
Yeah.
disaster. So it's like if
Right.
I think that was like the big difference between my first unengagement and my second is
Yeah.
that like the first I realized that like, okay, I actually need to figure out how to like communicate in a healthy way and
Yeah.
like because I just didn't know how. I just expected someone to always be like, hey, what's wrong?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And that this, I want to get to this example because it's
yes. Okay, get to the example.
It's insane. Yes. How incredibly simple it is, and has led to so many issues in relationships with me. Is the shower.
The shower.
The shower.
Like
where this animosity builds because I wouldn't clean the shower.
Okay.
And this whole mentality of, well, I shouldn't have to ask you to do it. You should just see that it's, needs to be clean. And at one point, like, it was a big blowout argument. I'm like, oh, just ask. Like, I'll clean it. Just ask. I shouldn't have to ask. You should notice it. I'm like, what is wrong? Like, why? Like, I don't understand. Like, it's not that bad. And so then I went to clean, and I looked at the shower, and I'm like, this is disgusting. Like, how did I not see this?
Yeah.
And then I realized that I am so nearsighted. I don't shower with my glasses on. So it just looks blue.
Right. Okay.
So I legitimately wasn't seeing what they were getting heated about, instead of them just going, hey, I cleaned the shower last time. Do you mind cleaning the shower this time? And I'd be like, yeah, I got you. Wow. They would let it fester, and I'd be like, everything is fine. Yeah. It all looks blue.
Yeah. Well, and if you are one of those people that like is, because I used to be the person that I would always put people's needs before mine, like always, you know what I mean? To the point where I was the person that was like, I'm cool as a cucumber, I'm cool as a cucumber, I'm cool as a cucumber, until one day you push me too far.
I get that. I can do that. I think that's a normal thing.
And but the thing is, like, my response is disproportionate to the amount of communication I've contributed to solving the problem.
I will then also have an argument for like a good day and a half with myself.
Oh, that'll happen.
Just walking around and be like, I can't believe the goddamn.
Well, and that's part of it too, is that we all need to recognize that we are probably having hypothetical arguments with people in our heads.
And the person's just like, I didn't have my glasses on. I didn't know.
Right. That's like such a great example of something that could be fixed in such a simple way.
Just, someone's like, hey, can you do this? You'd be like, yeah.
And I think too, it's like with the relationship that I just got out of, like, we were like pretty good at communicating. And I think like that also requires a safe space, is like, because, if in the past somebody you communicated with responded negatively, then you're kind of conditioned to not want to communicate. Because I don't think I've always been a terrible communicator. I think that I did try, what I mean? But there were relationships that I was in that I was like, okay, got it. Doesn't help to communicate. I'll just shove this down.
I'll just ignore it and just...
So in this past relationship, like, it did become like a safe place where like it was, okay to communicate. Until it wasn't, but that was only because, again, I think that we were already engaged. Yeah. So it was like at that point, I think it became harder for both of us to be honest about our needs because we were already engaged. So it was almost
so there was like this, I guess expectation of like, well, this is just how it's gonna be from now on.
So it was almost like we were clinging so tightly to protect something that, like, when it came down to it and realizing it was like, really, like, you just need to be honest fully throughout the whole way. Because I think, honestly, I'm like, maybe if we were honest a little sooner, things wouldn't have transpired the way that they did. You know what I mean? So I think it's hard.
Right? The fact that anyone makes it work, I'm like, how?
It's hard. But I think, like, I really do think that consistent...
It's like you have communication
to find and vulnerability.
A person that you're attracted to, that's attracted to you. That already is tough. Then you like each other at the same pace.
Yeah,
because we've all been on that date with a person like, I love you, and you're like, dear God, get me out of this.
Yeah, exactly.
And then and that's just what, the first 5 dates.
Yeah. And I'm like, there's so many other things that you need to know about a person, and I've thought about that actually recently. A lot. I'm like, okay, I think.
I imagine so.
I'm like, I think that.
Like, I was actively not trying to get into relationships because I'm like, oh, Sarah's just got out of one. I don't really want it. But
No,
yeah.
You know what? Talking about like keeping up the persona and the perception, like I put out, you know, like my New Beginnings little instrumental, and I put out Happy New Year, Darling. And I was like, you know what? Like, I'm just going to be forthright with this information, because trying to put out this music and not talk about where it came from would cause me stress.
Sure. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like, you know, I talked to Brendan, as you know, and I like was like, okay, like, I just want you to know, like, this is what I'm planning on. Because, you know, again, I feel like hopefully you have the amount of, like, integrity in your relationship with both of each other that, like, you feel the need to still respect each other when you get out of the relationship.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, like, talking to him about, like, hey, like, this is what I'm planning on. Like, do you need me to, like, untag you from posts that I have?
Nerf it
like,
a little bit.
do I need to delete pictures? Like, what makes you feel comfortable? Like, I don't think anybody's going to be coming at you in my comments or anything, but just in case, like, you know, I'm like, I am going to be talking about this. I'm not going to be saying anything like crazy or anything.
Because I think that's like how creative people like us process stuff.
Yeah.
Like that,
and I'm like, I'm not going to be disrespectful.
Yeah.
Towards him for any reason, because like I said, like at the end of the day, like we were both just like super honest with each other, and I think sometimes like you just have to realize that like sometimes like you want things to work, and at the end of the day it's like you can't
force them.
You can't force something to work, and you could probably make it work for a little longer, but you would just end up wasting time and being unhappy.
I feel like the longer you try to make it work, the longer you end up suffering through that kind of like.
Yeah. I mean, even right now, like we've kind of talked a little bit this week, because he was down in Florida, and you know, he offered to let me stay in the place that we had.
Yeah.
Because he wasn't going to be there, so I've stayed in the place, and so as a result, we've been talking a little bit more, and I'm like, man, I'm like, because you get into that pattern of like, oh, hey, I'm chatting with my best friend again, and then
that's the hardest part.
And then you get to the point where like, oh, okay, like now I'm checking to see if he's texted me on my phone, and now I'm getting sad that he has, and I'm like, oh my God, what have we done? We opened the wound again.
Yep. No,
you know?
I have always found, and I've had some very spectacularly bad ideas of relationships. Like you know, coworker, yep, done that, that's a bad idea. Like best friend, yep, done that, that's a bad idea. But like to me, I think the things that I kind of missed most is that kind of like, hey, how's your day? Like having that person just to kind of like, I'm gonna text you and I know you'll get back to me like.
Yeah. And it's like it's still, you know, he's like still someone to like laugh with and stuff like that, because we do have like good rapport and stuff.
Well,
but good. I'm also like, oh, like, you know, when you know something's not right, when it's not like a long-term relationship.
Yeah.
And like, you know, like just kind of realize like, okay, us being together now is a fantasy.
Yep.
And right now we are like giving into this fantasy that like things are good between us. You know what I mean? Where it's not like they're not good, but we're not in a relationship.
But you have to kind of like remember those.
So it's
why we are not together.
So it's almost like okay, like it's like now I'm realizing like, okay, well, you know, we still want the best for each other and stuff. But like, I think that I need like space to realize and like internalize that like, okay, us being together and being successful is a fantasy. So I need to like grieve the fantasy without having it in my face.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I'm like, when I have that space, there's probably a point down the road where like we can, you know, talk if we run into each other, and like I can wish you the best from afar. But I'm like, right now I'm like, okay, if I saw him
talking to me,
I'm like, if I saw him on a date with another girl right now, I'm like, I would be so sad.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so it's like, if I'm still having that feelings, then like the whole concept of like being friends is not real.
in the last 2 serious relationships I've had, I was like, I'm an adult. I can, like, they didn't end badly. Like,
Yeah, right.
It wasn't like a big, huge blowout. I mean, there were blowouts, but they weren't like,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
I'm like, I can still be friends with an ex. Like, that's, and then in trying to do so, you're like, this is dumb.
I think it's like
you at least a year, and then look back and go, do I want to still be friends with this person? Like, are they who I thought they were? Are they not who I thought they were? It's like you definitely need that kind of disconnect from them, where they're not constantly being brought up.
Right. And I think, again, like, you know, you're like, I'm an adult, I'm mature, and you like think like, I'm like, I think the mature thing to do is to continue to treat each other with respect.
Yeah.
You
I'm
know
not
what I
talking
mean?
trash to the person.
Yeah,
But just
I'm like,
sometimes
but
you
I
just need
think
them not in your life.
I'm like, but I think also like being true to your own like emotional boundaries is also necessary, because then if you're not, again, you're just participating in like the facade of like, oh, let's make even the breakup look perfect.
Exactly. You're doing the exact same thing. You're just
you know
not
what I mean?
together
So I'm
anymore.
like, and again, it's one of those
fantastic.
Yeah, it's like one of those you learn as you go. Like you start out with great intentions.
You try to learn as you go.
You start out with great intentions. We're gonna be friends till it's all good. Again, like I'm literally at the house right now while he's in Florida.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know.
Did you bring your cats?
No, I didn't.
All right,
I didn't.
You are
because I'm respectful. But yeah, just like kind of realizing over the last couple of days and talking, I'm like, man, I don't really know that I can emotionally deal with that, because I'm like, okay, well, I'm over here and I'm like, well, if I really think about it, I've spent at least 6 hours this week thinking about he and I.
Yeah.
Which is not a real thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's 6 hours of like work towards like personal goals or anything else productive in my life that I need that time in my life.
So my coping mechanism, and I don't know if it's a good one. It's probably not. There's probably worse. I just throw myself into work.
So,
because I feel productive. I'm feeling better about, like it does. It kind of hits all those things. Doesn't give me downtime to kind of wallow in misery. It just kind of does all the things that I need to kind of continue to function, especially like early breakup where you're just like, whoa, everything is terrible.
Yeah. So I will say, like, I definitely did that. Because I consciously did that because I was like, I know that there's going to be a point in time where I'm just going to break down.
Yeah.
I'm like, so we're just going to go balls to the walls right now until, and that's, studio time. I'm releasing songs every month. You know what I mean? So I'm very guilty of it too.
And that's the thing is like, I mean, there's way worse ways to deal with it.
But I think you do still need to take time out to process that.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, it becomes the next person you date's problem.
Yeah. I know people who are going through that.
Yeah. So I think like I was actually having this conversation with someone the other day about like dating and, when you're in the dating pool, sometimes like you realize quickly you're not interested in someone.
Yes. Yeah.
But, people will default to like ghosting people. Yep. Where it's like they're a human being that is just chosen to share part of their life with you.
Yeah.
No matter how insignificant that time was to you, like that's still, they gave a night to you. They gave 2, you know what I mean? Like, yep. I'm like, I think that we need to be human beings to each other.
Yeah.
And like, be like, hey, it was really nice to meet you. But I just don't see this going any further. So like, I appreciate your time.
I had this happen, I'm going to say 2 weeks ago, but in my brain, so that's probably more like a month ago, where I had dated, we went on 2 dates like 2 years ago. And then they DM'd me kind of out of the blue. I was like, hey, maybe we should hang. I'm like, all right. And then very nice woman, but just like, there just wasn't anything there. And so like at the end of the date, I was just kind of like, hey, like, I'm sorry, like, I don't know if this, going anywhere. Like, I did kind of be like, I'm real busy and like try to like soften the blow a little bit.
You always have to fess up.
Yeah,
to that.
you know,
That'll
like,
just,
you know,
if you say it's because of you just can't fit into your schedule.
Yeah.
If they'll, you know,
fully well knowing that I make my schedule.
Yeah.
But just kind of was, and she was just like, okay, you know, like,
yeah. And the thing too, the beautiful part about going that route of saying like, hey, you know, I appreciate you giving me your time, but I'm just not interested. You find out who people are super quickly by the way that they respond to that.
Oh yeah, I didn't even think of that.
Because I've had people that are like, thank you so much
Yeah.
for just like communicating that to me and your
Yeah.
honesty. Like, I appreciate it. And then other guys are like, well, you thought I was like in love or something? Like, it wasn't that serious. Like, just like super
Yeah, and you're like,
triggered
I was
and
just
like,
letting you know that you don't have to waste your time calling.
yeah. And I was like, you know what I mean? I'm like, well, thank God I avoided
Yeah.
that. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's just like people are just like, because then it's almost like, you know, if someone responds, not that it's like a test or anything, but it's just like when you get the response of someone that's responding maturely and the person that's responding egotistically,
Yeah.
like the person that's responding maturely, you have that conscious thought like, wow, that was like a really mature thing to like,
Yeah.
you know, that was a really mature response to rejection.
Right.
Because a lot of people don't know how to handle rejection.
No.
And it's like that's like a huge hot button.
Yeah.
So if you find that someone can respond maturely to rejection, it's like you might still not be interested, but at least you're like, wow, like
Yeah.
that was really cool of them.
Maybe someday.
Well, not even that. It's just
yeah,
like,
yeah.
you know what I mean? Just
Yeah.
like having, like knowing that someone is walking away out of your life knowing that they have respect for you versus that they think that you're a pompous asshole.
Yeah. And you know what? I have so much more respect for someone who can do that. And I don't do are there guy versions of teases that just kind of
Guy versions of teases?
Yeah, that kind of like, oh, we should go out, and then you're like, all right, like, and then they just
Oh.
kind of like string you along and never.
I mean, I haven't dealt with any since college because I
Yeah.
just don't give them my time. But yes, there are, for sure.
you know, like that I have zero respect for because you're like, I'm not in love with you.
Right.
I just thought there was like maybe a connection, we could hang out.
Yeah.
I don't have any time to like chase after you if that's
Right.
you know, like either we're gonna go out or we're not.
Yeah.
Just tell me to clean the shower.
You know what though? I have found now it's not that hard to spot the teasers, you know what I mean? So it's just like
Yeah.
they're not going to be the ones to communicate that like, hey, I'm actually just not that interested
Right,
or
right.
whatever. So it's like
But they just like it that you're gonna like I don't get it. Yeah.
because it's an ego boost for them.
Yeah, I guess.
So it's like you got to just recognize those people and be like, okay, I will not be putting any more effort into this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because there are a ton of people that they're lonely, they're not ready for a commitment, but
Yeah.
a little bit of ego boost of somebody wanting them around is great for their morale.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like
I've even like had conversation. I'm like, you're just like a tease, and they're like, well, yeah, it's fun, and I'm like, no, it's not.
yeah, fun
Not for the
who?
other person.
Yeah.
And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, wow. And it's that kind of like, okay, never like so over not interested in you anymore.
Yeah.
Like,
but again, like
Yeah.
that's just kind of when you learn who people are and I love when people show me their true character because then I'm like, okay, moving on.
Yeah, saving
or
time.
you
Yeah.
are one step closer to the inner circle. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
having someone be honest and like show their true character, whether that's positive or negative, like is great for
Yeah.
me because I know how close or far away to put you in my life.
Yeah. I love that you mentioned inner circle because I feel like that is, and that's even like not even just romantic, like
No.
friend.
Yeah.
And I can tell you the number, and you can't really go, oh, this is the moment, but you can tell when you've gotten there is like when you've stopped keeping track of who owes who what. You know,
Oh, is that I
I think so. So like it, you know, like you go to dinner with a buddy, and they're like, oh, I got it. And you're like, all right, because they know like next time I'll get it, or whatever. Like, and it's
Gotcha.
not the next time they're like, well, I got it last time, so you need to get it this. You know, like it's just
Oh, God.
And-
I don't think I've ever really kept tabs, to be honest. I'm more
Yeah.
of like a let's split it person.
yeah.
Even on dates and
even
stuff,
let's
I'm like,
let's split it. Is that I mean, it's just and I'm just using the tab as, but I feel like some people keep a tally of like the favors they've done for you. I was watching, friends of mine went down to DC, and I was watching their dogs, and they're like, oh, just try to bring them in. They have a dog door, so if they need to get out, blah, blah, blah. So I wasn't staying there. I was just kind of like going over, feeding them, making sure that they had whatever. And I got a call at, I think it was 2:30 in the morning. And my buddy's like, hey, I'm really sorry. He's like, but can you go bring the dog in and block the dog door? One of them was outside for hours just barking randomly. And I'm like, yeah. He's like, I'm like, don't worry about it. Like, and it's not like I have that in my, like, you owe me bank.
Yeah.
I just know if that was reversed, he would just do it.
Right. Yeah.
So it's that kind of like, yeah, whatever you need, if it's in my ability, I'm going to do it. And that's that inner circle. That's kind of what I was saying.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm definitely...
I mean, I might bust his balls about it once in a while.
Hey, remember that time?
Yeah. Remember that time?
Yeah.
When I said I should block the dog door, and you're like, no, it's fine. And I woke up at 2:30 to block the dog. Yeah, it's fine. Love you, Roman, if you're listening.
I think, yeah, that's true too. It's like you have to know that what the effort that you're putting in is reciprocated as well, obviously. I think when it comes to friendships with me, like I find challenging now is I'm not somebody that has a super, like, I don't have a very flexible schedule. I'm usually busy when other people are free to hang out.
Yep.
So it's hard with friendships because I find myself like I'm the friend that you can call anytime and I will go anywhere or whatever. Yep. But I don't have time to like just hang out. You know what I mean? Like I can't usually just hang out.
Yeah, I get that.
Entirely, so I'm like a very weird type of friend. Yeah. Like you can call me in an emergency, but if you want to hang out on like a random Saturday,
probably
the chances is I'm not going to be able to do that.
But I think that's part to being, I mean, you're essentially a small business owner.
Yeah.
Being a musician.
Yeah.
And being a creative person, so like you kind of have this. Do you ever go to High Limb, the cider place in Plymouth?
No.
G Pub.
Where is that?
It's over.
Oh, G Pub.
Yeah. So the High Limb's like inside there. They make the cider.
Okay. Then yes.
So the owner Jeremy, I was talking about some events with him, and I had my calendar open, and he's like, "Your calendar is giving me anxiety
because it's so full."
And I'm like, well, how often is High Limb open? And he's like, every day. And I'm like, so if I don't have something on my calendar, then I'm not open that day. Yeah. And he's like, oh, yeah, okay, that makes sense. And it's that kind of like, like I was saying earlier, how it kind of like was like, oh, I don't know if I have time to Yeah. Again, that is true and is not true at the same time.
I'm very much like, dating is not a priority for me right now. Like my priorities are my goals and stuff like that. I'm like, maybe in a year, I will entertain like actively trying to find someone. I'm like, but right now, I'm like, I don't even have the time. I told somebody this the other day because he was very nice and he was like, I just would like to hang out with you at some point. And I was like, I just like really don't have the mental space or capacity or emotional capacity to like go out to dinner with another guy now.
Yeah.
Or to like, or to have or to feel like someone is like waiting on me. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because it was essentially like, oh, well, like whenever you're free like this. And I was just like, I can't. And I'm like, and I respect your time enough to tell you that like, this is just not a priority for me. Like you seem like a very nice person. Like I can see how like some of our goals even align or whatever, but like it's just not a space that I can invite you into that would be even fair to invite you into.
Hit the bricks, pal.
Well, no, it was just you know what I mean? Just being very clear that like I just don't have that dedicated time. Like I'm
many people aren't used to someone being so aware and communicative.
Well, and talking about the differences of responses, that person was very much like, I really respect and appreciate that. You know what I mean? So
because you could have just been like, oh, sure, like someday.
Yeah.
You know? And then he calls you in a week, and then in 2 weeks, and it's like,
yeah, you know. And again, it was just a very nice person, but I was just like, I'm like, oh man, I'm like, it's getting to the point where like, you know, I'm trying to take time out of my day to respond thoughtfully to his messages because he is such a kind person.
Yeah.
But also like I don't have the time or emotional space to be doing that.
Yep. Yeah,
you know what I mean? So I'm like, I just really need to be honest with you. And again, it was super respectful about it. He was very nice and you know, it was just, but I don't think people value other people's times enough to be.
In general, they don't.
Yeah, like I think that we just all need to be more aware that like when we talk to people, when we're dating people, like we are literally like we're sharing time with another human being and their time is just as valuable as yours. So it's like being respectful of that and just knowing that like, hey, whatever comes of this, like obviously you go on a first date, nobody is expecting this to end in marriage. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, and if you are, then you know
we got to. You're like, no, thank
we
you.
got to talk about. Yeah,
I think
we got to talk about your
too.
expectations going into a first date. So I think it's like, you know, people are like, oh, it's so uncomfortable to reject someone. I'm like, but you can reject someone with kindness. You know what I mean?
You're not rejecting them, being like, ugh, you're not worthy.
Right? Exactly.
We're not.
And I think too, that's like our problem as a whole. Anyway, is like we think that someone saying no to us equates to everyone saying no to us. And it's like, some people are just not your person.
True. And from someone who has self-esteem problems, I can relate to that other.
I'm like, not everyone in the world has just rejected you. You know what I mean? Because I think at a certain point,
it feels like it sometimes. So.
We start to, you start to tally it in your head. Like, okay, this person rejected. I mean, talk about rejection. I'm like, okay, I got engaged the first time. And then that didn't follow through. The second time, that also didn't follow through. I'm like, I'm having a real hard time rationalizing that the third time it would follow through. You know what I mean? But I also have to rationalize like, okay, well, those two experiences are not going to be my third experience. Like that, you know what I mean? Like just because I've had these experiences in the past doesn't mean my third one has to follow suit. There is another realm of possibility where that works out.
And the interesting thing, and this has been something like I have crippling self-esteem issues and have been working on them for a long, long time and talking about that like that.
Well, you're a beautiful person, Andy. I should just tell you that.
Stop. Tell me more.
Yes, you're a beautiful person.
No, but like that rejection does feel like like everyone got together and was like, you're just on the no list.
Yeah.
And it's funny because like even I'll be having a bad day and just being like, oh, it's never gonna happen. Like no one's in it, into me, whatever. And my friends would be like, come on. I'd be like, all right. I know specifically there are people interested in me that I'm not interested in.
Right.
So,
exactly.
So I am putting this in the text because I have done enough work to realize that.
Yes.
I'm just saying it feels like.
Right. And that's.
Yeah.
And I think that's like something that is valid to feel.
Yeah.
For a reason, but because you have to. There's a difference from like pushing that emotion down and realizing that it exists.
It's fine to experience it.
Yeah,
but you have to have that realization where like, oh, I know there's someone that I can call right now and go on a date with.
Right.
I just don't want to.
But that's where being mindful comes in, right? Because like if you're having that emotion and you're just like, I'm wrong to have that emotion and you shove it down, then there's never that mindful point where you're like, okay, I'm feeling this way.
Yeah.
But actually, in reality, I've also rejected people. Like, this doesn't mean that, like, do I think that they're going to be rejected by everyone that they meet? No, like, you know what I mean? Like,
depends on the person we're talking about. There's a couple there.
I mean, there's somebody for everybody.
Yeah.
No, you know what I mean?
And the funny part is then, like, you'll find out, like, and we've all been on horrible dates. I'm sure I've been someone's horrible date.
Yeah.
And then it's just like you find out that person gets married and you're like, wow.
To who?
Really?
Who are they?
Really?
But also, that's kind of a beautiful thing because you're like, okay, like, that person was not my individual, but it doesn't mean that they don't deserve happiness.
Of course not. Yeah,
you know what I mean? So it's like, it's also that kind of thing, like, great, like, good for them.
Good for you.
But also, it's like, you gotta take those emotions and be mindful of them, because it is
because you don't get to, the emotions just happen. Like you don't get to, it's like when people be like, can I tell you something without you getting offended? And you're like, I mean, maybe. Like,
yeah, right. Well, if I get offended, I get offended. Do you want to tell me not or
like,
not?
You told me, so I won't get mad at you, because obviously you're trying to like
communicate something. Yeah.
I'm like, but if I get offended, I'm gonna get offended. There's nothing I can do about it.
Right. Exactly. Like you can't tell me what to feel
like,
after
shut
you tell
off
me.
my offended part. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
Do you? So when I think of someone whose life events is clearly reflected in their music. See, I'm bringing it back.
Yeah.
I always think of Lenny Kravitz.
Okay.
Because he's had, like, this was forever ago. I watched, like, one of those, like, VH1 behind the music. And, like, he was kind of, like, talking about, when his albums came out in retrospect to his life. And you're like, oh, that makes so much sense. And, like, this one album that he did that wasn't a commercial success was around the time his mother died. And it was, like, really dark. And, like, not what you would expect from Lenny Kravitz.
Yeah.
And I was like, this kind of makes a lot of sense. And do you think you can look back at your music and kind of go like, oh, look at all these, this all like lines up?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely feel like I've always been somebody that writes about like my life experiences.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm not out here just writing like 3-line bops, like I'm just like, that's not, if I'm putting a song out, it's for a reason. So it's like I can definitely line it up in where my life was at that time. Which is funny, because I was saying the other day, I'm like, this whole album that I'm releasing are basically songs that I wrote after my first engagement. And like they're...
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it's like, it's essentially like my self-healing journey of that time in my life. And so now to be back in this place...
Do you find like going through those songs
so fucking hard?
I was gonna say, is it helpful?
It's helpful, but it's so hard. Like, because talking about like what our feelings are versus like the reality of the situation, you know what I mean? Right now I'm like, Happy New Year, darling is like, here to a better me and a better you. And I'm like, that's right. Like, we both like found our own paths in life and stuff. And I'm like, now I'm just gonna get crying now, and I'm like, you know what I mean? Like,
you would be the second person to cry on the show.
I'm like, it all worked out.
Yeah.
I'm like, but man, did that suck?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I'm like, oh, the fact that I have to go through this again is so shitty.
Yeah.
But also, I'm like, okay, I was here before, and I found the other side of that. So I'm like, okay, no, we just need to follow these songs. Like, you know what I mean? And then I have another one that's called Shine, which is a bit happier than Happy New Year, Darling, because Happy New Year, Darling is just like a bittersweet goodbye, and it's just a little heartbreaking. So if you are somebody that has a hard time around Christmas and you just need to feel your feels, Happy New Year, Darling is probably for you. But Shine is like all about like, no matter what, like, I'm going to shine. Like, I'm, going to rise above everything. Like, I have the choice to do that. So, like, yesterday I was having, like, a tough morning, and I had gotten my mix back from John Ellis in Hanover. And I was just like, I was literally walking in the rain, just listening to that song.
Yeah.
Like, I'm gonna, like, you know,
you
what
were
I mean?
Walking in that, because that was not, that wasn't like
in the morning. In the
okay,
morning, it
I was
was
gonna
still
say
drizzling.
that's not like,
it was not like the tsunami weather we had.
It's not like singing in the rain. That's like getting blown away.
Yeah. But so yesterday I had like this positive, uplifting message that I was like boosting my soul and stuffy like that. You know what I mean? But it's really hard to just like kind of go through this whole thing again, and the fact that like, Brent and I were talking, and he was like joking, like, oh, like none of these songs are like written about me. And I was like, yeah, well, they're still for you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Not yet.
I'm like, because I'm like, it is just, I'm just going through the same things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like, to have this, to be releasing it now is really hard, and I've definitely cried in the studio plenty of times. I never met poor John Ellis before.
Yeah.
I like went in a month ago.
I'm not always like this.
And I'm like in the studio, like he's playing the mix of Happy New Year, Darling, and I'm crying. I'm like, it's just so beautiful. And like, I'm trying to sing and I'm crying.
He's probably just being like, oh my God, this is so awkward.
I know. Well, I told him, I'm like, I hope this, he's like, you're not the first person. And I'm like, okay, great. Like, so he's been really great about that. But yeah, it's definitely like touched emotional chords in me. And it's like, it is very therapeutic to like get out.
Yeah.
Because I feel like it does give me the ability to kind of like tell my story. And hopefully, you know, I'm like hoping those songs reach a very specific audience that need to hear them. You know what I mean? Like, you're like, people are like, oh, like I want it to be like on the radio and like, I'm just like, I just want the people that are going through this healing journey to like, I want them to hear it specifically. I'm like, I don't know how to reach y'all, but if you're going through something,
I am very much a music is instrumental into my mental health and getting over things and celebrating things. Like, it is super crucial. What is like your go-to pick-me-up music?
Besides my new song, Shine. So I have
a little less self-promoting.
I have like,
but that's awesome though.
But the thing about that is it's literally me singing to myself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it is just like very much like a one-on-one personal. I'm like, okay, Sarah, we got this. You know what I mean? It's like not even about promotion. It's just about like, it's me telling myself a message. But I do have this like, I have a morning dance jams playlist that I have. I have like a gratefulness playlist that I have, and I also have one that I think is entitled "Everything's Gonna Be Okay," and like that one just has like a bunch of stuff on it. But one of the funniest songs that are on there that I'll admit is, have you ever seen Frozen 2?
No.
Okay, so there's this song that Olaf, the snowman, sings when he's in this like woods, and he's like, "This will all make sense when I am older. Someday I will see that this makes sense." And I shamelessly will tell you that I have sang that song at the top of my lungs several times, because it's just one of those, like, the fact that I'm singing this children's song at the top of my lungs is ridiculous and makes me laugh, and it's a message I need to hear.
You know what I mean?
It's the perfect song, actually.
I have kind of, I wouldn't say sing it at the top of my lungs.
You should play that song sometime on this podcast.
but there are frequently times in my life where I've been like, just keep swimming, just keep swimming. You know,
like ridiculous things that you have to say to yourself that are just like, it's so funny that you're saying it, that makes you chuckle, but also it's like a very pertinent message that you need to hear.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're like, who cares if this is for kids? Like, I'm an adult and I need to hear this. I'm like, I will have this singing snowman. Get me through my day.
Someone wrote it for a kid because it's got a great message.
That whole movie, though, that movie's for adults.
The second one?
So I will honestly tell you, probably not a popular opinion, I didn't like Frozen 1. I didn't like the movie. I thought it was too overhyped. I watched it and I was like, I don't get it.
Yeah, it was. I've watched
one,
it. I remember almost nothing about it.
The second one,
great
movie.
Yeah.
I thought it was awesome because it, like, Disney has a, like, they're always sneaking in adult messages.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, things that adults really need to hear that'll just knife you in the heart, and you're like, oh God. Yeah. Well, that's Frozen 2. So if you haven't given Frozen 2 a shot as an adult, I'm just gonna tell you, like, you really have to.
One of my last long-term relationships, one of the last things we did, we were watching Coco together.
Oh,
and at the end, she's like, "Are you crying?" I'm like, no.
Oh my gosh.
Like, but it was such a happy cry at the end of that. Like, it was not a. It was sad, but like in a very.
Have you ever seen? Oh God, why did it just come out of my head? Soul. It's actually a Pixar movie.
Yeah, that one's good.
That movie has like the best message
it's
ever,
very good.
And that's one of those ones that I watched and I was like, oh my God.
Pixar is one of the companies where I'm like, you know,
they're always doing good stuff.
Looking on my cross country journey, I'd be like, you know, there's an alternate version of Andy that like threw his life away to go work for Pixar, because it's just the stuff they put out is phenomenal. I mean,
you're not dead yet, Andy.
I'm committed to what I'm doing. Like, okay. I don't, you know, like if I worked there, it would be in a different capacity. But the stuff they put out is so good. I mean, Inside Out is just unbelievably
so good. The first one and the second one.
I haven't seen the second one yet.
It's good.
And it's so like meaningful and touches on, you know, like just the idea of a memory that is both happy and sad. Mm-hmm. Like I feel like people in the world are so hung up on either it is A or B, and nothing is A or B. It is always some sort of mix.
Yeah.
And it's such a important thing. And
I think too, like Inside Out is like one of those movies where,
and goddamn funny.
It is funny. The second one is so good too, though. I won't, because you haven't seen it.
Yeah.
But like I think as adults, especially adults that just like go into normal careers.
Yeah.
I think that like a lot of people they almost like they just follow this path that was mapped out for everyone.
Yeah.
Like it's the default map that you're handed when you're born and when you graduate high school.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And everyone just follows that map. And no one, and a lot of people don't stop to question that map or like who they are as a person. And a lot of people they haven't gone through anything uncomfortable enough to make them stop and question.
Yeah. And I think the most fascinating thing is like if you take those people and be like, you know, who would you like to be, who you inspired by, like what kind of field would you want to go in, the people that they most kind of, you know, long to be, or like those success, like if you look at really truly successful people, they didn't follow those paths. Mm-hmm. You know, Bill Gates, one of the richest guys, dropped out of school. It was like, I'm gonna go do my own thing. And like it's, and I think the younger generations are seeing it, and I think that's why a lot of people are like, oh, these kids don't want to work. I'm like, no, they just don't want to grind their life away for no reason.
Exactly.
And I think
they're trying to find purpose.
Yeah, I think they see being like, oh, you know, my parents worked 9 to 5 at this pencil pushing job, and they're unhappy, and you know, yeah, they have a house, but you know, where's the meaning to it? You know? To crank out more kids.
What's it all for?
To crank out more kids that are going to be unhappy? You know, like,
to pay a mortgage that'll prevent you from doing the stuff that you really want to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
One of my most monumental moments in my life was working a shitty retail job, and they were like actively pushing me into management, like grooming me. They're like, this job's opening up, you need to put in for it, blah, blah, blah. Even if you don't get it this time, you know, it tells the higher ups that you're, you know, and it was big money, you know, like it was going to be altering my life. And I happened to have car trouble that day, and I was walking home. I lived a mile away. Mm-hmm. And for like a week, I'd been just miserable. And then I was just like, halfway through that walk, I'm like, I don't want this. Like, taking that job, Inebri-art would have just gone away. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I have no interest. Like, it's not about the money. I want to be happy. Mm-hmm. And I just never followed that through. And I was just like, and to this day, don't regret that decision at all.
So I wonder if a lot of people like in our community would have a similar story, because you telling me that story, have I ever told you the story about how my first job out of college, I had gotten to a point where like I was smoking Black and Milds in my car?
No. But you have to start your story with Once Upon a Time.
So once upon a time, there was a girl who needed a job. She just graduated. So I got a job out of college. I had done an internship at a place where I was in the fitness center, because I went to school for like exercise science and motor development therapy and stuff like that. So I loved that internship. Yeah. But when I graduated, there was no position in the fitness center. So I was like, I'm just going to take any open position. Yep. And I will just get my foot in the door, and then I'll be able to transition over when that opens up. Well, I got a job at the maintenance department, like taking phone calls. So when everybody,
Oh boy.
when anybody would have something wrong
Yeah.
in their apartment,
Yeah.
so they're already upset that something's wrong in their apartment, they call me to schedule.
Hooray!
They call me to schedule their appointments for the maintenance guys, and I love the people that I worked with.
Yeah.
But I just did not have the thick skin for that. Like I would leave crying. I would go in crying.
Yeah.
You know, and I remember like I heard on a radio station about like another, I forget who it was. It might have been Luke Bryant, honestly, who had like quit his like 9 to 5 and started getting into music and stuff like that. And you know, that day
Jeff Rosen.
What's that?
Jeff Rosen.
Jeff Rosen quit his 9 to 5. Well, we all quit it.
Yeah, but like he quit his 9 to 5 because he lost a gig because he had to go to work. He got stuck working and he.
Oh,
yeah,
interesting.
So, yeah.
I didn't know that. Okay. Yeah. So I'm.
Yeah.
So I'm.
Sorry.
Like,
Didn't mean
no.
to
No.
interrupt.
I'm
Yeah,
like wait. What? So yeah. So like I'm. That was actually like probably the same time because Jeff and I went to college together.
Oh really?
Yeah, we were in a class together in college.
Oh jeez.
It's folklore. That's pretty cool. Anyway.
I can't imagine him in school.
Yeah, it's great. Very much the same.
Yeah.
So anyway, so like that day I was driving home and I was like, I had started picking up Black and Milds.
Yeah.
This was probably like day 2 or day 3 of picking up Black and Milds from the gas station because I was like, this is like a deep breathing thing. The wooden tip was like comforting somehow because it reminded me of the doctors when they'd be like, you got the shot and they'd hand you the stick so you could like lick it or whatever.
Okay.
No, that never happened to you?
No.
Well, we'd get a shot and our doctor would hand us like the little stick and you could just like suck on it. It was, I don't know, whatever.
Okay.
But anyway, so it was like
I got the this is going to
tip.
hurt you more than it hurts me kind of thing.
Maybe that's the girl's treatment. I don't know. But anyway, so like I was smoking Black and Milds on my way home and I just looked at myself in the rear mirror as I'm sitting in traffic because I'm an hour away from my house and it's, an hour and a half back. And I'm just looking at myself in the mirror and I'm like, exactly what you said. I'm like, is this where I want my life to be trending? Because it's not, this is not going to get better. It's gotten worse.
Right.
You know what I mean? And every day we're waking up and we're going back to this job where we know we're going to get yelled at. We know we don't like it. And every day we're getting more and more worn down.
Yeah.
To the point we're now smoking and we don't do that. And so I'm like, so the next day I went in and I was like, I will stay here until you train someone. I'm like, but and I gave music a shot for 3 months. I was like, I'm going to either figure this out in 3 months or I'm going to go look for another job.
Yeah.
And I was
awesome.
like, and I figured it out in 3 months. And I was like, I'm like, you just got to do the way that you want to do it.
Yeah. And it's kind of that red flag, like relationship wise is if your day-to-day life is you get up and you go to work and you come home and you make dinner and sit and watch the same rerun of a sitcom over and over again every single day. Yeah. You're not for me.
Yeah. So it's funny because I try not to even watch TV anymore.
Yeah.
I try not to get into series. Like I'll watch a movie.
Yeah.
But I won't watch series because I am the kind of person that if I don't have something on my calendar and I'm like just feeling in a lazy mood, I will default to watching a program.
Yeah.
And I will obsess over it until it's done.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I don't even.
I mean,
I'm like, I know I'm like that, so I won't even turn it on anymore. And sometimes I'll literally watch the first episode of something, and then I'll go and watch the last episode because I'm like,
oh, interesting.
I'm like, I don't even care anymore.
See, I don't have a problem with like kind of binge watching because I feel like that's just an extended movie.
Yeah.
And like if you come home and you like watching something while you eat dinner, fine. Like it's not that. It's the fact that like. Literally people be like, oh, I watch The Office every single night. And be like, it's been off the air for a long time. They're like, oh, I know, I just keep watching the same episodes. And be like,
that was me for a really long time.
There is something like I do like you came in, I had a Christmas movie on.
Yeah.
I will frequently have shows and that's more just like background noise and you can tune in for a second. But just when like that is all you do, like I take days off where I just sit around and loaf and do nothing. Mm-hmm. That's normal.
That was literally what you just described was basically me at 29. Like I was still doing music, but that was like my day. I would go do my gig. I would come home. I would smoke, and then I would watch The Office.
Yep.
And I was like,
it's just like,
eventually I woke up to it, and I was like, again,
just do something.
Is this is this where we want our life to be trending? Because this is not who we intended to be.
Right.
Like, we could be doing this at a desk and getting paid way more.
Yeah. And like, I've been in relationships that was just like what they did, and I'd be like, let's do something. And they're like, what? I'm like, anything. Do you want to play a board game? Like, do you want to, like, let's do something interactive.
You know what's funny though? I'm like, is that just like what it defaults to in the end? Because I feel like in my last relationship, I'm like, at first we were like so good at like going out and going on hikes every day and like playing board games instead of watching TV. And then I'm like, at some point something shifted, and we were just, it was like we would still go on walks and stuff.
Yeah.
But
I mean, there's a certain amount that does, I mean,
I'm like, do you just get too comfortable where you stop pushing each other?
I don't think people like to push themselves in general. I don't think that's a common thing.
But I'm like, you know...
But I know what you're saying, and it's like, Is
it that infatuation phase where you're like, oh, that person wants to go on a walk, I'll go on a walk too. Oh, you want to do this? I'll do this too.
There is definitely
and
some
then
of that.
you just both end up tired?
But I'm also very much a creature of habit.
Yeah.
Like, I get up in the morning, I get in the shower, I brush my teeth, comb my hair, yada, 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 get dressed. I watch Good Mythical Morning.
What is that?
It's a YouTube show. It's fantastic. It's like 15 minutes, and I usually like have it on while like I'm brushing my teeth and getting dressed.
Okay.
I go downstairs. I say, Alexa, play the news, and it plays the headlines because I can handle headlines right now. Mm-hmm. Anything deeper than that, and I'm like, need little TLC.
Yeah.
I make my breakfast sandwich, and then I go to work, and like. Almost every day. Like, that is the cycle. So I feel like when you kind of get into a relationship, you kind of get into the schedule. And like, so my youngest and their boyfriend have their Wednesday night. They make dinner together. Mm-hmm. And like, that's like, you almost have to be like, hey, this is Wednesday. This is the night we make dinner together. This is... Yeah. Because otherwise it's really easy to just be like, let's order a pizza and sit down.
Yeah.
And
I'm like, that's the thing. I'm like, I feel like you just have to continue to be so mindful in relationships.
Yeah. Because otherwise they get stale.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's my opinion. I mean, some people might be like, I like the redundancy of,
Yeah, well, yeah, maybe.
I don't know. But hey, we all need, people that work redundant jobs too, so like I guess there's a thing for everybody.
We appreciate you.
Yeah. We love you. You're probably not listening.
But if you are, hi.
Yeah. Hey. So I have to wrap this up. Otherwise my editor will yell at me because we've gone way over. Where can people go to find out the new songs, listen to the new songs, find out when the new songs are coming out, the tour dates, yada yada, all the PR,
all that stuff,
all the crap that everyone else does at the beginning of the interviews?
But you have to get to the end to get the good stuff.
Yeah.
So you can just go to my website, sarahmartinmusic.com, Sarah with an H, Martin like the guitar, music like you'd spell it in any other scenario of life, and YouTube, Facebook, Instagram are also Sarah Martin Music, and if TikTok still exists by the time this comes out, I'm sparingly on there, but I'm not really contributing too much effort to that these days.
I think everyone's kind of like pumping the brakes on it to see what happens.
Although maybe I should go on there for that reason. Maybe people are.
Are you on Blue Sky yet?
I have no idea what Blue Sky is. You got to be kidding me.
So Blue Sky is like the dude who owned Twitter.
Yeah.
Sold it to Elon Musk for like way more than it's worth.
Right.
And essentially created an alternate version of Twitter, call it Blue Sky, and it's much more, I don't want to say restrictive, it is more, careful about allowing like abusive behavior and hate messages and whatnot, the kind of things that Twitter was starting to like allow back in.
Friendly for like videos and stuff like that, or is it like Twitter where you just type 30 words? Or
it's
whatever?
Essentially exactly like Twitter.
Okay,
but it's literally right now the fastest growing social media. But
Thanks, Andy. Just one more thing
dude,
I'm gonna add to my plate.
I literally just went, I'll create an account, so if it does actually stay that way, we already have the account. So
that's a good idea.
Yeah, there's a bunch of them that we've signed up for that everyone's like, this is the new one. And I'm like, all right, we'll sign up, and if it catches on. But
people need to stop making apps that we need to be on.
It's
we want to have lives, okay?
Oh God, I hate.
We can't do everything.
The funny thing is, now that we do so much promotion for our events through social media, I'm rarely on social media for myself.
I'm never on social media for myself. Well, that's not true. Instagram, I've been doom scrolling like crazy lately.
Yeah. I think I think if I'm going to scroll through anything, it's TikTok because it's more entertaining.
Yeah.
You know, roll for sandwich. It's great.
I don't know what roll for sandwich is.
So it's how familiar are you with Dungeons and Dragons?
Not. I mean, I know the premise.
Okay. So there's dice, and this guy basically took Dungeons and Dragons dice.
Yeah. To
make his lunch one day. So he would roll a 6-sided die, and based on the number, like, okay, that's the kind of bread we're having.
That's fun.
And he, in a year's time, he went from like handwritten notes on a piece of paper to people from the Dungeons and Dragons movie being on his thing as promotion. Like overnight kind of success, and just seems like a really likable guy, and he eats the weirdest goddamn sandwiches.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, so super fun. Just check it out.
I don't know if that's going to serve my time in the way that I want it.
Yeah,
but
it's only about 12 seconds. Yeah, it's the ability to then scroll through videos for the next like hour.
I was going to say that's what it is. It's 12 seconds turned into an hour is what that is.
So, but thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Andy. Thanks for having me.
Anytime.
Always a pleasure.
Anytime. And so listeners, this was Relationship Talk with Andy and Sarah. And I'm not trying to speak for Sarah, but don't listen to any advice because it's not really working for me.
No, it's good advice. It's good advice. It's good dialogue.
And we'll see you guys next week. And thanks for checking out the show today, listeners. If you enjoyed the content today, you can go over to patreon.com/Inebri-art to support the show. You can join over there for just a few dollars a month and help us provide this fun content that you just checked out. You can also email us at Inebri-art.com with your questions, complaints, and concerns, or you can find us on all social medias at Inebri-art or at Inebri-art6 on Instagram. And also don't forget to check out our other shows, Bar Talk Podcast, Old Colony Cast, Inebri-art, and all the other shows on the Inebri-art Network, which you can find at Inebri-art.com. So thanks again for listening.